I threw the Mafia boss's 10K bribe back at him and said, "I'm not for sale, but you look like you are." The fluorescent lights in my cramped Brooklyn office buzzed like dying wasps, casting everything in a sickly yellow that made the stacks of eviction notices on my desk look even more depressing than usual. I'd been staring at the Castellano Properties case file for 3 hours straight, my 4th cup of bodega coffee gone cold beside my keyboard, when the door opened without a knock. I didn't look up. Office hours are 9 to 5. It's 7:30. I won't take much of your time. Miss Santos. The voice made me pause mid-keystroke. Expensive. Controlled. The kind of voice that didn't ask for things because it was accustomed to taking them. I glanced up and immediately understood why my paralegal Maria had that panicked look on her face as she hovered behind. Him in the doorway, the man standing in my office, wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to broad shoulders that tapered to a lean waist. His dark hair was styled with the kind of effortless precision that required both money and a skilled barber. But it was his eyes that held me, dark, calculating, dangerous in a way that made my pulse kick up even as my spine stiffened. He was beautiful the way a loaded gun was beautiful. "Mr. Rossi," I said flatly, recognition clicking into place. Dante Rossi, Vittorio Rossi's oldest son. I'd seen his photo in the background of a dozen crime scene reports, always just out of frame, always with an airtight alibi. "I know who you are, and if you're here about the Castellano case, you can turn around and walk back out." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Determined. "I respect that." He moved closer, and I caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something darker, smoke and cedar and danger. "May I sit?" "No." He sat anyway, settling into the chair across from my desk with the kind of ease that spoke of complete confidence in his safety. His right wrist bore a Patek Philippe watch that gleamed under the harsh lighting. "Old money, blood money. The Castellano Properties case," he began, his voice conversational as if we were discussing the weather. "You're representing 43 tenants facing eviction. 47 as of this morning." I closed my laptop, giving him my full attention. Better to face the threat head-on. Families, single mothers, elderly couples who've lived in those apartments for 30 years. And you're here because you're good at your job. He reached into his jacket. I tensed, hand moving toward the panic button under my desk, but he only withdrew a white envelope. Too good. He placed it on top of the Castellano file with deliberate care. The envelope was thick, unsealed. I could see the edge of green bills inside. $10,000, he said quietly. Cash, untraceable. Consider it a retainer for a different case, or a vacation fund. The Caribbean is beautiful this time of year. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my face neutral. This was it, the moment Maria had warned me about 3 weeks ago when I'd first taken the case. "Be careful, Gabi. Castellano Properties has connections. Bad ones." I thought she was being dramatic. I reached for the envelope slowly, aware of his gaze tracking every movement. Pulled out the bills, counted them with methodical precision, letting the silence stretch. $10,000. More money than I'd see in 3 months of 80-hour weeks fighting losing battles for people the system had abandoned. Blood money. I stood abruptly, bills clutched in my fist, and walked around the desk. Dante Rossi remained seated, watching me with those dark eyes, something like anticipation flickering in their depths. "You're right," I said softly. $10,000. Untraceable. I threw the cash directly in his face. Bills fluttered through the air like dirty snow, landing on his lap, his shoulders, scattering across the worn carpet. $100 bill caught on his perfectly styled hair, before drifting down to rest against his jaw. "I'm not for sale, Mr. Rossi." My voice came out steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. "But you? You look like you are. You look like you've been for sale your entire life. Now get the hell out of my office." For 3 heartbeats, he didn't move, just stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. Shock, maybe, or anger barely leashed. Then his lips curved into a genuine smile, sharp and fascinated, like a predator spotting prey that had just done something unexpectedly interesting. He stood slowly, brushing bills off his jacket with unhurried movements. When he bent to retrieve the envelope, I noticed his knuckles, scarred, the kind of damage that came from repeatedly hitting things. Or people. "Expensive mistake, Miss Santos," he said quietly, pocketing a single $100 bill while leaving the rest scattered on my floor. But an unforgettable one. He walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the frame, glanced back over his shoulder. "That fire in you," he murmured, and something in his voice made my skin prickle. "I wonder how long it burns." Then he was gone. I stood there for a full minute, breathing hard, before my knees went weak and I grabbed the edge of my desk for support. Maria rushed in, eyes wide with panic. "Gabi, mierda, are you insane? Do you know who that was?" "Yeah." I sank into my chair, staring at the money littering my office floor. My hands were shaking. "I know exactly who that was." Maria crouched down, gathering bills with quick, nervous movements. "We need to call the police. Or maybe you should drop the case. Gabi, these people don't play games." "I don't drop cases." I pulled the Castellano file back toward me, opening it with fingers that had finally steadied. "And I sure as hell don't take bribes from Mafia princes who think everyone has a price." "He's going to come back." "I know." I met her worried gaze. "But I'm not backing down. Those families are counting on me. 47 people who have nowhere else to go." Maria placed the gathered money on my desk. $9,900. He kept one. Souvenir, probably. I shoved the bills into my desk drawer, making a mental note to donate them anonymously to a women's shelter. Blood money, but it could still do some good in the right hands. "Lock up when you leave. I've got another 3 hours of work tonight." She hesitated at the door. "Gabi, be careful walking home. Please." After she left, I sat in the buzzing fluorescent silence, staring at the Castellano file without really seeing it. My pulse had finally slowed, but I couldn't shake the memory of Dante Rossi's eyes, the way he'd smiled when I threw his money back at him. I wonder how long it burns. Not a threat. Something worse. A promise. I worked until midnight, trying to bury myself in legal precedents and housing code violations, but my concentration was shot. Finally, I locked up the office and stepped out into the cold March night. The subway station was 3 blocks away, the streets mostly empty except for a few late-night stragglers, and the ever-present hum of the city. I'd made it half a block when I felt it, the prickling awareness of being watched. I turned slowly, scanning the street. A black sedan idled near the corner, tinted windows reflecting the streetlights. As I watched, it pulled away smoothly, disappearing into traffic. Paranoia. Had to be paranoia, but I walked faster anyway, keys clutched between my fingers like makeshift brass knuckles, and didn't breathe easy until I was safely inside my studio apartment in Crown Heights. All 3 locks engaged. I poured myself a generous glass of cheap red wine and collapsed onto my secondhand couch. My phone buzzed. A text from my little brother, Mateo. "How's my favorite lawyer sister?" "Your only lawyer sister," I typed back. "And exhausted. You?" "Chemistry midterm kicked my butt, but I passed. You okay? You sound stressed. Just a long day. Love you. Love you too, Gabi. Don't work too hard." I set my phone down, staring at the Castellano files spread across my coffee table. Mateo was a junior at Columbia, full scholarship, studying pre-med. Everything I'd worked for since our mother died 7 years ago. Every 80-hour week, every skipped meal, every case I took that paid in gratitude instead of money. All of it was to make sure he had the opportunities we never had growing up in the Bronx. I couldn't afford to be scared. Couldn't afford to back down. But as I drained my wine and crawled into bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Dante Rossi's smile. The way he'd pocketed that single bill like a trophy. Expensive mistake. We'd see about that. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find a bouquet of white roses on my desk. No card, just 24 perfect blooms in a crystal vase that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Maria stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "They were here when I opened up." "Gabi donate them." I didn't touch the flowers. "Women's shelter down the street. They'll appreciate them." "He's not going to stop." "I know." I booted up my laptop, pulling up the Castellano case timeline. But neither am I. Over the next week, the gifts kept coming. A bottle of Barolo wine worth $500. I returned it to the return address with a note. Still not for sale. F off. A pair of diamond earrings that I immediately brought to the police station. They told me without proof of theft, there was nothing they could do, so I donated those too. A first edition Neruda poetry collection that made me pause because how did he know I loved Neruda? That one I kept, hiding it in my desk drawer and hating myself for the weakness. Each time I refused. Each time, I doubled down on the case, working longer hours, building an airtight argument. The Castellano properties evictions were based on fraudulent building violations. I had testimony from 3 city inspectors willing to admit they'd been pressured to file false reports. I had documentation showing shell company ownership trails that led back to Rossi family businesses. I was building something that could hurt them, which was probably why. On the 8th day after throwing money in Dante Rossi's face, I noticed the surveillance. The same black sedan from that first night. Different parking spots each time, but always within sight of my office or apartment. Once at the bodega where I bought my morning coffee, I saw a man in a dark jacket watching me from across the street. He didn't bother hiding when I stared back. Maria noticed too. "Gabby, please. We need to call the police." And tell them what? I'm being followed by people who might be connected to organized crime, but I have no proof, and they haven't actually done anything illegal. I rubbed my temples, exhaustion pulling at me. The NYPD isn't going to provide protection for a legal aid lawyer who pissed off the wrong people. Then drop the case. No. Dios mío. You're stubborn. It's why you love me. But the surveillance was escalating. I started varying my route home, taking different subways, staying late at the office until the cleaning crew arrived. I told myself I was being smart, being careful. I didn't admit I was scared until the night everything changed. It was a Thursday, almost 2 weeks after the bribe attempt. I'd worked until 11, fueled by coffee and righteous anger, and the knowledge that tomorrow I was filing my motion to halt the evictions. The office was silent except for the hum of my laptop and the distant sounds of traffic. My phone rang. Unknown number. I should have let it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered. Gabriela Santos. Miss Santos. The voice was older, rougher than Dante's, with an accent that spoke of Sicily and old-world power. My son tells me you're a woman of principle. Every muscle in my body tensed. Vittorio Rossi. You know who I am? Good. Saves time. I heard the clink of ice in a glass, the sound of expensive whiskey being poured. My son approached you with a generous offer. You refused. Admirable. Stupid, but admirable. If you're calling to make another offer, I'm calling to tell you that I'm less patient than my son. His voice went cold. The Castellano case ends. Tomorrow you file a motion to withdraw as counsel. You tell the judge you have a conflict of interest. You walk away. And if I don't, then you become an unfortunate statistic in a city that has too many of them already. A young woman walking home alone at night. So many things can happen. Your brother Matteo, he's a smart boy. Columbia University. It would be a shame if something interfered with his education. My blood turned to ice. You stay away from my brother. Then stay away from my business. You have 24 hours, Miss Santos. Choose wisely. The line went dead. I sat frozen, phone clutched in my hand, panic clawing up my throat. He'd threatened Matteo. These people knew where my little brother went to school. Knew his name. Knew enough to. I grabbed my keys and ran. My apartment building was quiet when I arrived just before midnight, the hallway lights flickering the way they always did. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking, and shouldered open the door. The smell hit me, first. Wrong. Foreign. Cologne and cigarette smoke in a space that should smell like my jasmine lotion and the lavender. Candles I burned every night. Someone had been here, frozen the doorway, keys still in hand, every instinct screaming at me to run. But then I saw them. 2 men sitting in my living room like they owned the place. One sprawled on my couch, the other standing by my window, both wearing dark suits, both watching me with cold calculation. The one on the couch smiled. Miss Santos, we've been waiting. I backed toward the door, but a third man appeared behind me, blocking my exit. He was huge, shoulders nearly as wide as the doorframe, with scar tissue around his knuckles and a flat, dead expression. "Mr. Rossi sent us," the one on my couch continued, standing slowly. "Said to deliver a message. Personal-like." The one by the window pulled a knife from his jacket. Long blade, wickedly sharp, catching the light. "We're going to have a conversation about respect," he said quietly. "About understanding your place. About the things that happen to little girls who don't listen when powerful men speak." I opened my mouth to scream, but the man behind me clamped a hand over my face, dragging me backward into my apartment. I thrashed, trying to remember the self-defense class I'd taken in college. But he was too strong, too fast, and glass shattered. The window exploded inward in a spray of crystalline fragments. And then Dante Rossi was there, moving through my apartment like violence incarnate. I'd thought he was dangerous when he sat in my office offering money. I'd had no idea. He didn't say a word. Just raised a gun, matte black, silencer attached, and shot the man holding me in the shoulder. The grip on my face released, and I stumbled forward, catching myself on the wall. The man by the window lunged with his knife. Dante moved like liquid, sidestepping the blade and bringing the gun down in a vicious arc. The weapon connected with the man's temple with a crack that made my stomach turn. He dropped, unconscious, before he hit my worn carpet. The third man, the one who'd been on my couch, raised his hands. "Dante, come on. We were just following orders." "My orders supersede my father's." Dante's voice was arctic, emptied of all warmth. "She's under my protection. You touch her again, you die. You tell my father that." He kept the gun trained on the man while turning to me. His dark eyes scanned me quickly, checking for injuries. "You hurt?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "Then pack a bag. 2 minutes. Essentials only. We're leaving," I should have argued. Should have called the police. Should have demanded explanations. Should have done anything except follow orders from a man whose father had just threatened my brother's life. But I could still feel that hand over my mouth. Could still see the knife catching the light. I grabbed my backpack and shoved in clothes, laptop, phone charger, the photo of my mother and brother I kept on my nightstand. 90 seconds later, I was ready. Dante had zip-tied the conscious man's wrists to my radiator. The one he'd pistol-whipped was still out cold, bleeding slowly onto my carpet from a head wound. "You're going to call my father," Dante said to the conscious one, his voice soft and terrifying. "You're going to tell him exactly what I told you. She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Understood?" The man nodded frantically. Dante grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the shattered window. "Fire escape. My car's in the alley. I'm not going anywhere with you until you explain. They were going to torture and murder you." His eyes met mine, and I saw something raw beneath the cold control. "Film it. Send it to your brother and your clients as a warning. That's the message my father wanted delivered. So you can come with me and live, or you can stay here and be dead by morning. Your choice, Gabriella." I looked at the 2 men in my apartment, at the blood soaking into my carpet, at the shattered glass glittering in the lamplight. Then, I hitched my backpack higher and followed. Dante Rossi out into the night. The penthouse in Tribeca was everything my Crown Heights studio wasn't. Spacious, modern, decorated with the kind of understated luxury that came from old money and older power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Manhattan skyline, and the kitchen had more square footage than my entire apartment. I stood in the middle of the living room, backpack still on my shoulders, watching Dante methodically check the locks on his front door. 3 deadbolts, a security system that looked military-grade, cameras in every corner. He shrugged out of his jacket, and I saw the shoulder holster, the gun nestled against his ribs like a second skin. Blood, not his, spattered the white collar of his shirt. "Guest room is down the hall," he said without looking at me. "Second door on the left. Bathroom's attached. There are clothes in the closet that should fit you." "Why do you have women's clothes?" Now he did look at me, one eyebrow raised. "My sister visits sometimes. I keep things here for her." Sister. Right. Because Mafia princes had sisters who needed spare outfits in their heavily fortified penthouses. I dropped my backpack on his pristine hardwood floor. "I need answers. Starting with why you just killed those men." "I didn't kill them. Shoulder wound, concussion. They'll live." He moved to the kitchen, pulling out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses, though I'm tempted to go back and finish the job. Your father sent them. Yes. And you. What? Disobeyed him? Won't that cause problems? Dante poured 2 generous measures of whiskey, sliding one across the marble countertop toward me. It will cause significant problems, which is why you're staying here until I resolve the situation. I didn't touch the glass. I have a life, a job, cases that can't wait. Your brother is being moved to a secure location as we speak. 2 of my men are with him. He thinks it's a surprise scholarship program retreat. He's safe. The casual way he said it, like he'd already taken control of every aspect of my existence, made anger flare hot and bright in my chest. You can't just... I can, and I did. He downed his whiskey in one swallow. You threw money in my face and called me a whore. Unforgettable, truly. But it also painted a target on your back the size of Manhattan. My father doesn't tolerate disrespect. Especially not from women. Especially not from women who are threatening to expose his money laundering operations. I grabbed the whiskey and drank. Liquid fire burned down my throat, making my eyes water. The Castellano case is dead. Has to be. He poured himself another measure. You file a motion to withdraw tomorrow, cite conflict of interest, and the families find new counsel. No. Gabi, no. I slammed the empty glass down harder than necessary. Those families have been fighting for 6 months. Every other lawyer they approached turned them away because Castellano Properties has connections, and no one wants to risk it. I'm the only one who took their case. If I withdraw, they lose everything. If you don't withdraw, you die. His voice went flat. Is that really worth 47 tenants? Yes, I met his eyes. That's exactly what it's worth. You don't understand because you've never had to fight for anything. Everything you have came from blood money and family connections and... You think I don't understand? He laughed, sharp and bitter. I was 17 when my father put a gun in my hand and told me to kill a man who'd stolen from us. 17. The man begged. Had children. I pulled the trigger anyway because that's what you do in this family. You obey, or you become the example. The words hung between us, raw and ugly. So yes, Gabriella, I understand exactly what it costs to fight, and I'm telling you that this fight will cost you everything. Your life, your brother's future, your career, everything. All for people who will never know how much you sacrificed. They'll know because I'll win. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling my office. Maria needs to know I'm okay, and I need to coordinate. He plucked the phone from my hand. No calls, no emails, no contact with anyone until I've handled my father. Give that back. No. We stared at each other across the kitchen island, and I realized with cold clarity that I was trapped. Trapped in a luxury penthouse with a man who'd just injured, 3 people to save me. A man who'd threatened me 2 weeks ago with expensive mistakes. A man whose father wanted me dead. A man who was currently holding my phone hostage and looking at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. How long? I asked quietly. A week, maybe 2. Depends on how quickly I can negotiate your safety. And if you can't? Something dark flickered across his face. Then I'll have to make different arrangements. Permanent ones. I didn't ask what that meant. Wasn't sure I wanted to know. Guest room. Second door on the left? He nodded. I grabbed my backpack and walked down the hallway, acutely aware of his gaze tracking my movement. The guest room was beautiful. King bed with white linens, modern art on the walls, another set of those massive windows overlooking the city. I locked the door behind me, then checked the windows. 40 stories up. No fire escape. No way out. I sat on the edge of the bed, phoneless and trapped, and tried not to think about the way Dante had moved through my apartment like an avenging angel. The cold precision of his violence, the blood on his collar, the way his eyes had scanned me for injuries with something that looked almost like concern. I was so screwed. I woke to the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, I thought I was back in my apartment, that everything from last night had been a nightmare. Then I opened my eyes and saw the unfamiliar ceiling, the expensive sheets, the morning light flooding through windows that cost more than my law degree. Real. All of it was real. I found clean clothes in the closet like he'd promised. Jeans that fit perfectly, a soft cotton shirt, even underwear still in packaging. His sister must be exactly my size, which was either convenient or deeply unsettling. When I emerged from the guest room, I found Dante in the kitchen cooking. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black Henley that showed off lean muscle and those scarred knuckles. His hair was still damp from a shower, and without the tailored suits and dangerous smiles, he looked almost normal. Until you saw his eyes. Those were still a predator's eyes. Translate café con leche, he said without turning around. I noticed you drink it every morning at the bodega on Fifth Avenue. The casual admission that he'd been watching me, studying me, sent ice down my spine. You've been stalking me, protecting you. There's a difference, is there? I moved to the counter where he'd set out 2 mugs. The coffee smelled exactly right, made exactly how my mother used to make it, because from where I'm standing, both look like obsession. He turned then, spatula in hand, and studied me with unnerving focus. You want to know what obsession looks like? Obsession is spending 2 weeks trying to forget the way you looked when you threw money in my face. Obsession is reading every case you've ever filed, watching you walk home at midnight eating bodega sandwiches because you work too hard to eat real meals. Obsession is lying awake at night thinking about that fire in your eyes and wondering how long I could watch it burn before I... He cut himself off, turning back to the stove. Flipped an omelet with more force than necessary. Before you what? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Nothing. Eat breakfast. We need to talk about next steps. He plated the omelet, perfect golden edges, fluffy interior, and slid it across to me along with fresh fruit and toast. I should have refused on principle, but I was starving, and the food smelled incredible. We ate in tense silence, the only sound the clink of forks against plates and the distant hum of traffic 40 stories below. Your brother called your office this morning, Dante said finally. Maria told him you're working from home on a big case. He's fine, thinks the scholarship retreat is legitimate. My men are keeping him safe without him knowing they exist. How generous. I pushed my plate away. What about the Castellano case? What about it? You said I have to withdraw. I said no. Stalemate, his jaw tightened. This isn't a negotiation, Gabby. My father has ordered your death. The only reason you're still breathing is because I've claimed protection over you, which puts me in direct conflict with him. If you continue with the case, he'll see it as my weakness. He'll move against both of us. Then help me. I leaned forward, holding his gaze. You said the Castellano Properties is a money laundering front. You must have evidence. Financial records, testimony, something that ties it to your father's operations. Give it to me. Let me expose the whole thing legally. Put them away properly. You want me to betray my family. I want you to do the right thing. I stood, pacing to the windows. Manhattan sprawled below us, millions of people living their lives, unaware that in this penthouse a legal aid lawyer was asking a Mafia prince to burn down his empire. You said you were 17 when you killed that man. That your father made you. But you're not 17 anymore, Dante. You're 34 years old with enough blood on your hands to fill this whole building. At what point do you decide you're done? It's not that simple. It never is. I turned to face him. But that doesn't make it impossible. He stood slowly, moving around the counter to stand in front of me. Too close. I could smell cedar and smoke, could see the faint scar along his jawline, could feel the heat radiating from his body. You think you know me, he said quietly. You think you can see some good buried under the violence. You can't. I'm exactly what you called me. A man for sale. I've been bought and paid for since the day I was born into this family. Then buy yourself back. I didn't step away, even though proximity to him made my heart race. You saved me last night. You could have let those men, but you didn't. You chose. You can keep choosing. For a long moment he just looked at me. Then he stepped back, breaking the spell. I have meetings today. Business I can't postpone. You stay here. Don't answer the door. Don't go near the windows. And for God's sake, don't try to leave. Or what? You'll shoot me? His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. No, but my father will. And I'd rather not have to explain to your brother why his sister got herself killed for 47 tenants. He grabbed his jacket, checked his gun, and headed for the door. Paused with his hand on the knob. The Neruda collection I sent you, he said without turning around. You kept it. I know because it wasn't with the other gifts you donated. You hid it in your desk drawer, bottom left, under the case files. Heat flooded my face. Y translate me gustas cuando callas porque estás como ausente, he quoted softly. Neruda's 20 Love Poems, Poem 15. I like you when you are quiet because it is as though you are absent. My mother used to read it to me when I was young, before she understood what my father was, what I would become. Then he was gone, 3 deadbolts sliding home behind him, and I was alone in his fortress with too many questions and not enough answers. I spent the day exploring. The penthouse was immaculate but not sterile. Books lined floor-to-ceiling shelves in the living room. Marquez, Borges, Neruda, Hemingway, mixed with thriller novels and histories of ancient Rome. The kitchen had professional-grade appliances and a spice collection that suggested he actually cooked. No photographs, but there was art. Modern pieces that probably cost fortunes, but also a small charcoal sketch of a woman with kind eyes that could only be his mother. In his study, I found what I was looking for. The room was locked, but the lock was simple enough to pick with a hairpin. Inside, filing cabinets lined one wall, and a massive desk held 2 monitors and a laptop. I shouldn't have snooped. It was a violation of whatever precarious trust existed between us. I snooped anyway. The first filing cabinet was full of business documents. Legitimate ones, or at least legitimate-looking. Import-export records, shipping manifests, tax documents for Rossi Enterprises. The second cabinet was locked with a more serious lock that I couldn't pick. The desk drawers were unlocked. I found pens, notepads, a .45 caliber handgun that made me recoil, and in the bottom drawer, I found a file labeled simply Castellano. My hands shook as I opened it. Financial records. Shell company documentation. Proof that Castellano Properties was indeed a front for laundering money through the real estate market. Falsified building inspection reports with signatures from inspectors I recognized. Tenant complaints that had been deliberately buried. And worse, documentation of a murder. Marcus Webb, tenant organizer, found dead 8 months ago in an apparent mugging. Except here was proof it wasn't a mugging. Here were orders, in Vittorio Rossi's handwriting, to handle the problem. Here was confirmation that my case, my family's, my everything was connected to an actual murder. I heard the deadbolt slide open. Panic spiked through me. I shoved the file back into the drawer, shut it as quietly as possible, and bolted from the study. Made it to the kitchen just as Dante walked through the front door. He stopped when he saw me. His eyes went to the kitchen, to my flushed face. Back to the kitchen. You went through my things. Not a question. No. Don't lie to me. He moved forward, and I backed up instinctively until I hit the counter. Your hair is messed up and you have that look. What did you find? Nothing. Gabi. The Castellano file. In your desk. The murder documentation. Marcus Webb. The words tumbled out in a rush. Your father ordered it. Ordered him killed because he was organizing the tenants, and it was threatening the whole operation. My case, it's not just about evictions. It's about covering up a murder. Dante's expression went carefully blank. You shouldn't have seen that. Did you know? I gripped the counter edge behind me. When you came to my office with that money, did you know about Marcus Webb? His silence was answer enough. I'm leaving. I pushed past him, heading for the guest room. I can't be here. I can't be protected by someone who... He caught my wrist, spinning me around. You leave, you die. Is that really what you want? What I want is to do my job without being caught between a murderer and his son. I tried to pull free, but his grip tightened. Not painful, but immovable. Let go of me. No. His dark eyes bored into mine. Not until you understand. Yes, I knew about Marcus Webb. Yes, I've known since the beginning that your case threatens everything my family has built. And yes, I came to your office to make you stop because that's what I was ordered to do. Then why am I here? Why save me last night if you're just going to... Because you threw money in my face. His free hand came up, cupping my jaw with surprising gentleness. Because you looked at me like I was something dirty that needed to be scraped off your shoe. Because in 20 years of doing my father's bidding, no one has ever made me feel ashamed until you. I stopped struggling. Ashamed? I've gathered evidence against my father for 6 months, since before you took the Castellano case. Financial records, testimony from associates I've flipped, documentation of murders and money laundering and every ugly thing this family has done. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I was going to give it all to the FBI. Burn down the empire. Disappear with enough money to live comfortably somewhere my father's reach doesn't extend. Why? Because I'm tired. The words came out raw. Tired of being what he made me. Tired of blood and violence and looking at myself in the mirror and seeing a monster. I wanted out. I wanted to be worth something beyond fear and death. And then I walked into it. And then you walked into it. His lips curved into a bitter smile. Righteous fire and sharp tongue and no sense of self-preservation. You reminded me what integrity looks like, made me want to be something other than a man for sale. My heart hammered against my ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm giving the evidence to the FBI in 3 days. Everything. My father goes to prison. The empire crumbles. The Castellano case becomes unnecessary because the whole operation will be exposed. His hand slid from my jaw to the back of my neck. And you go back to your life. Your office, your brother, your 80-hour week saving people. Safe. What happens to you? I testify. Take whatever deal the FBI offers. Hope it's not life in prison. He stepped back, releasing me. Or maybe my father kills me before the trial. Either way, you're safe. That's what matters. I should have been relieved. This was what I wanted. The Rossi Empire destroyed legally. My family's protected. Justice for Marcus Webb. This was everything I'd been fighting for. So why did the thought of Dante behind bars, or worse, dead, make my chest ache? 3 days, I whispered. 3 days. He turned away, heading for his study. Until then, you stay here, stay safe. And try not to hate me too much for the things I've done. He closed the study door behind him, and I stood in his kitchen, surrounded by the smell of coffee and cedar smoke, trying to figure out when exactly the monster had started looking human. The next 2 days passed in strange suspension. Dante left early each morning, returning late, always with that careful mask in place. We moved around each other like chess pieces, speaking only when necessary, maintaining polite distance. But the awareness was always there. The way his eyes tracked me when he thought I wasn't looking. The way my pulse kicked up whenever he walked into a room. The way we both reached for the coffee pot at the same time and his hand brushed mine. Electric contact that made us both pull back like we'd been burned. On the 3rd morning, the day he was supposed to meet with the FBI, I woke before dawn and couldn't fall back asleep. I found him in the living room, sitting in the dark, staring at the city lights. Can't sleep? I asked quietly, thinking about what I'm about to do. He didn't look at me. Betraying family is its own special kind of hell, even when the family is rotten. I sat on the opposite end of the couch, tucking my legs underneath me. Do you regret it? No. He finally turned and his eyes were haunted. But that doesn't make it easier. My father, he's a monster, but he's my monster. He taught me to ride a bike, took me to Yankees games, told me I'd be great someday, and then he put a gun in my hand and turned me into this. You're more than what he made you. Am I? He laughed softly. I've killed 11 people, Gabby. 11. I know their names, their faces. I see them when I close my eyes. Including Marcus Webb? No, that was my father's work directly. I was in Milan when it happened. But I knew it was ordered. I knew and I did nothing. He scrubbed a hand over his face. Does that make me complicit? Does knowing and staying silent make me guilty? I thought about the law, about accomplice liability and moral culpability. About the families depending on me and Marcus Webb's widow, and the 11 people whose lives Dante had ended. Yes, I said finally. It makes you guilty, but guilt isn't the end of the story. What you do next. That's what defines you. Poetic. He stood, moving to the windows. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. My meeting is at 9, Federal Plaza, 14th floor. I'll be gone most of the day. There's food in the fridge. Maria knows you're safe. I had one of my men call her anonymously. And Matteo thinks you're on a retreat. He's fine. Dante, don't. He cut me off. Don't say whatever you're about to say. Don't thank me or tell me I'm doing the right thing or offer absolution. I don't deserve any of it. I was going to say, be careful. That stopped him. He turned slowly, studying me with those dark, dangerous eyes. Why do you care if I'm careful? Good question. Why did I care? He was a killer, a criminal, a man whose world I'd stumbled into by accident. He'd stalked me, threatened me, held me captive in his gilded fortress. By all logic, I should want him in prison alongside his father. But I kept thinking about the way he'd moved through my apartment, violence and precision, to save me. The way he cooked café con leche exactly right, the way he read Neruda and looked at me like I was a puzzle worth solving, the way his hand had felt cupping my jaw, thumb brushing my cheekbone. I don't know, I admitted, but I do. So be careful. Something shifted in his expression. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping directly in front of me. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. You're dangerous, he murmured. I'm a 115-pound lawyer. You're the one with guns and a body count. That's not the kind of dangerous, I mean. His hand came up, fingers threading through my hair with aching gentleness. I mean the kind of dangerous that makes a man want to be better. That makes him think about different futures, about mornings drinking coffee and nights without blood, about being worth something to someone who sees him clearly and doesn't flinch. My breath caught. Dante, I'm in love with you, Gabriela Santos. The words were quiet, certain, devastating. Have been since you threw my money back at me and looked at me like I was trash. Since you refused every gift and told me to F off. Since you refused to be bought or scared or silenced. You can't be. Can't stop it. His forehead rested against mine, his breath warm on my lips. Believe me, I tried. Spent 2 weeks trying to convince myself it was just fascination, just the thrill of someone saying no. But it's not. It's the way you fight for people who can't fight for themselves. The way you work until midnight on cases that pay nothing. The way you love your brother enough to sacrifice everything for his education. You're everything I'm not, and I kissed him. Didn't think about it. Didn't weigh consequences or calculate risks. Just surged up on my toes and pressed my mouth to his, cutting off words that were breaking my heart and rewriting every truth I thought I knew. He made a sound low in his throat, surprise or surrender. And then his hands were in my hair, angling my head, kissing me back with the same focused intensity he brought to everything. His mouth was hot and demanding and somehow gentle, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he wasn't careful. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were molten. That was a mistake, I finished, even though my lips were still tingling, and I wanted nothing more than to kiss him again. You're about to betray your family. I'm still trapped here. This isn't... We can't... I know. He stepped back, and the loss of his warmth made me shiver. But I'm still in love with you, and when this is over, when my father is in prison and you're safe and I'm whatever I become after today, I'm going to ask you if there's any chance you could feel the same. Any chance at all that you'd want a future with a man like me? I couldn't finish. Didn't know what to say. You don't have to answer now. He grabbed his jacket, checked his gun. Just think about it. And if the answer is no, if you can't see past the blood and the violence and the 11 lives I've taken, I'll understand. I'll disappear. You'll never have to see me again. He was at the door when I found my voice. Dante, he turned. What if the answer isn't no? His smile was blinding. Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth the risk. Then he was gone, and I was alone with the memory of his kiss, and the terrifying realization that somewhere between throwing money in his face and watching him risk everything to save me, I'd fallen for the monster. The call came at 2:15. I was pacing the penthouse, trying not to imagine all the ways Dante's FBI meeting could go wrong, when his phone, the burner he'd left on the counter with strict instructions to answer if it rang, started buzzing. Unknown number. My hands shook as I answered. Hello? Miss Santos. Vittorio Rossi's voice, cold and controlled. I understand my son is at Federal Plaza as we speak, having a very interesting conversation with some federal agents. Ice flooded my veins. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. Dante has been gathering evidence for months. I knew. Did he think I was blind? That I wouldn't notice my own son betraying me? A pause. The clink of ice in a glass. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call him. Tell him that if he says one more word to those agents, you die. And then you're going to pray he loves you more than he loves his newfound integrity. You're bluffing. I'm in his penthouse. 40 stories up, protected. Are you? Something in his voice made my blood run cold. Look out the window, Miss Santos. Southwest corner. I moved to the window on shaking legs. Looked down at the street below. A white van idled at the corner. As I watched, the back doors opened, and I saw equipment. Cameras. Rifles with scopes. One phone call, Vittorio continued. Or my men put a bullet through that beautiful window, through your head, and your brother gets a video of your death delivered to his dorm room. Dante testifies, and Matteo lives with the knowledge that his sister died because of a case she wouldn't drop. Your choice. My hand tightened on the phone. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. Now call my son. Tell him the meeting is over. Or everyone you love dies badly. The line went dead. I stood frozen, staring at the van below. This was it. The moment where I had to choose between justice and survival. Between doing the right thing and protecting the people I loved. Between Dante's chance at redemption and my life. I thought about 47 families facing eviction. About Marcus Webb's widow. About Matteo, 19 years old and brilliant and everything good in my life. About Dante, walking into that FBI office with 20 years of evidence and the courage to finally choose right over loyalty. I picked up the phone and dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. Gabby, what's wrong? Your father knows. Dante, there's a van outside. Rifles. He said if you don't stop talking immediately, they'll kill me. And then Matteo, he's serious. Silence. Then, quiet and deadly, put me on speaker. I did. Father. Dante's voice carried through the penthouse. I know you're listening. Here's how this ends. You call off your men, or I tell these agents about the body you keep in the meat freezer in Red Hook. The one you haven't disposed of yet. The councilman who was asking too many questions about your operations. The one whose family is still searching for him. My stomach turned. You're bluffing, Vittorio said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. I have photos, timestamps, everything. I've been documenting your kills for 2 years, just in case I ever needed leverage. So here's your choice. Let Gabby live, or I expose every murder, every body, every secret you've kept for 30 years. The FBI already has the financial evidence. I was being merciful by keeping the murders off the table, but you threaten her again, and I burn it all, including you. You'd send your own father to death row? For her? A pause. Without hesitation. The longest silence of my life. Then, the van will leave. But this isn't over, Dante. You've chosen your side. There's no coming back from this. I know. Dante's voice softened. Gabby, are you hurt? No, just scared. I'm coming home. 20 minutes. Stay away from the windows. And Gabby? His voice dropped to a whisper. I meant what I said this morning. Every word. The call ended. I sank onto the couch, adrenaline making my hands shake. Below, the white van pulled away from the curb, disappearing into Manhattan traffic. 20 minutes until Dante returned. 20 minutes to process that he'd just threatened his own father with death row. For me, I'd send my own father to death row. For her? Without hesitation. What had I done? What had we become to each other in these strange, suspended days? I was still sitting there, mind spinning, when Dante burst through the door. He took in the scene with one sweep. Me on the couch, pale and shaking, the windows intact. No blood, and the tension in his shoulders eased fractionally. You're okay, he breathed. Your father is going to be arrested within the hour. Raid's already in motion. FBI moved fast once I mentioned the councilman. He crossed to me, kneeling so we were eye level. His hands framed my face, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. I'm sorry. I should have anticipated he'd move against you. Should have. You threatened him with death row. For me, I'd do worse. His eyes were fierce. I'd burn the whole world, Gabby. For you, I kissed him again. Harder this time, pouring every ounce of fear and relief and desperate, terrifying feeling into the contact. His arms came around me, crushing me against his chest, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this. Just his mouth on mine, his hands in my hair. The solid reality of him alive and here, and choosing me over everything his life had been built on. When we broke apart this time, his forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing hard. The FBI, I managed. Your testimony is done. They have everything. Father's being arrested as we speak, along with 42 associates. The Castellano Properties case is redundant now. The whole operation will be exposed through the federal charges. Your families will get their apartments back through asset seizure proceedings. And you? His jaw tightened. Immunity deal. Full cooperation in exchange for no charges. I testify against my father, help dismantle the organization, and walk away clean. Legally, anyway. That's good. That's everything, is it? He pulled back slightly, studying my face. Because in 6 hours, my father will know I'm the reason his empire burned. Every family connected to the Rossies will have a price on my head. I'll spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for the bullet I know is coming. That's not clean, Gabby. That's just a different kind of prison. I traced the scar along his jaw. This man who'd killed 11 people in Red Neruda and just destroyed his entire world for me. So what happens now? Now I wait for your answer. His hands settled on my waist, warm through my borrowed shirt. Earlier, I asked if there was any chance you could feel the same, that you could want a future with someone like me. I need to know, Gabriella. I need to know if I just burned everything for a woman who can never see past the monster. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the moment. The choice that would define everything that came next. I thought about the Gabi from 3 weeks ago, the one who'd thrown money in a Mafia prince's face and told him to F off. She would have said no, would have walked away from the blood and violence and danger, back to her safe, righteous, exhausting life. But that Gabi hadn't watched Dante move through her apartment like an avenging angel, hadn't seen him cook café con leche in the quiet morning darkness, hadn't felt the way his hands trembled when he touched her, like she was something precious he was afraid to break, hadn't heard him say, without hesitation, when asked if he'd send his own father to death row for her, "I see the monster," I said quietly. "I see the 11 lives you took, the blood on your hands, the violence you're capable of. I see all of it, Dante." His face went carefully blank, bracing for rejection. "But I also see the man who's been gathering evidence for 6 months, because he was tired of being what his father made him. The man who reads poetry and remembers how his mother used to recite it. The man who saved me when he could have let me die. The man who chose right over loyalty, over legacy, over everything." I cupped his face with both hands, forcing him to meet my eyes. "I see you, all of you. And yes, I want a future with you. I want mornings drinking coffee and nights without blood. I want to watch you figure out who you are when you're not your father's weapon. I want—" He kissed me before I could finish, and this time it wasn't gentle or tentative. This was claiming, possessive, a promise sealed with bruising intensity. His hand slid under my shirt, splaying across bare skin, and I gasped into his mouth. "Mine." He breathed against my lips. "Say it. Say you're mine. Yours." I pulled him closer, dizzy with want. "But you're mine too. No more Mafia prince. No more family obligations. Just Dante. Just mine. Just Dante," he agreed, his voice wrecked. "Yours, only yours." We moved to his bedroom. Our bedroom, maybe. If this new future we were building actually worked, and the city lights painted patterns across his sheets as he laid me down with aching care. "I need to know it's real," I whispered, suddenly uncertain. "Not just adrenaline or fear or Gabby." He settled beside me, propped on one elbow, his free hand tracing the line of my collarbone. "I've wanted you since the moment you threw my money back at me. Every night you slept 20 feet away was torture. Every morning I made you coffee and pretended I didn't notice the way you watched me. This is real, the most real thing in my life." I reached up, tracing the scars on his shoulder. Thin white lines barely visible in the dim light. "Who did this?" "Initiation. 17. My father's men held me down while someone carved the family crest into my skin. Proof of loyalty." His voice went flat. "Proof of ownership." I pressed a gentle kiss to the scar tissue, silent acknowledgement of pain and survival, and the boy he'd been before the monster took over. He shuddered under my touch, and when he looked at me again, his eyes were molten. "So beautiful," he whispered, his hands framing my face. "How did I get this lucky?" "You didn't. You made a choice. You chose this. Best choice of my life." He kissed me again, slow and deep, and his hands mapped my body with reverent precision. Every touch felt like a question, and I answered with gasps and sighs in the arch of my spine. When he pulled my shirt over my head, his gaze darkened with hunger and something softer. Wonder, maybe, or gratitude. "Look at me, Gabby," he commanded softly. I did, holding his eyes as he slowly removed the rest of my clothes, then his own. The scars were everywhere, testament to violence and survival and a life I could barely imagine. I touched each one, learning the geography of his pain, and he watched me with an expression so vulnerable it made my chest ache. "You're sure?" he asked one last time. "I'm sure." He moved over me then, settling between my thighs, and the weight of him felt right. Safe. Home. His mouth found mine as he asked with his body, and I answered by pulling him closer. "You're mine now," he murmured against my lips, entering me with aching slowness. "Mine, no one else touches you. No one else sees you like this." I wrapped my legs around his waist, taking him deeper, tears streaming down my face from the intensity of emotion and sensation combined. "Then you're mine too, just Dante. Not the killer or the Mafia prince. Just mine, just yours," he breathed, beginning to move. "Always yours." Our rhythm built slowly, finding each other in the darkness. His hands were everywhere, threading through my hair, gripping my hip, cupping my face, and I clung to him like drowning, half laughing, half sobbing as pleasure and emotion overwhelmed me. "Possessive devil," I managed, nails raking down his back. "Your possessive devil," he corrected, voice rough with need, holding me impossibly closer. "Only yours." "Say it again." "Yours," I gasped. "Always yours." He buried his face in my neck, movements becoming urgent, desperate, and I felt myself climbing toward something vast. When I shattered, his name on my lips, he followed moments later with a sound that was half groan, half prayer. We lay tangled together in the aftermath, hearts racing, breathing gradually slowing. Dawnlight filtered through the windows, painting everything gold. "I love you," he whispered against my temple, his voice raw with emotion. I held him tighter, tears still wet on my cheeks. "Love you too, even though you're the criminal who ruined my life." He laughed, breathless, pressing kisses to my forehead, my eyelids, my lips. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "Good." I traced the line of his jaw. "Because I'm high maintenance. 80-hour work weeks, brother, to put through medical school. Strong opinions about justice and corruption. I'll support every work week, help with tuition, and listen to every opinion." His fingers threaded through my hair. "I'll be whatever you need me to be. Just be yourself. The real you, not the version your father created. I don't know who that is yet. Then we'll figure it out together." He pulled me closer, tucking my head under his chin. "What happens now?" I was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything that had changed in 3 weeks. The case that had started it all, the families who'd get their homes back, Marcus Webb's widow who'd finally see justice, Matteo, safe and oblivious, studying for his chemistry final, and Dante. This complicated, dangerous, damaged man who'd chosen me over empires. Now, I tilted my head back to look at him. "Now you testify. Your father goes to prison. We deal with the fallout. And there will be fallout. Every family connected to the Rossis will want revenge." His jaw tightened. "I won't let them touch you, I know. But it means looking over our shoulders. Careful exits from buildings, security systems and weapons permits, and a life that's not entirely safe." "We could leave," he offered quietly. "Witness protection, new identities, fresh start somewhere far from New York. And my job? My family's? Matteo? I know," he sighed. "I know you won't run. It's one of the things I love about you. That stubborn refusal to back down. So we stay, we fight. We build something new right here in the wreckage of what you're destroying." I pressed a kiss over his heart. "Something clean. Something ours." "Something ours," he echoed, and in his voice I heard hope. We stayed like that as the sun rose over Manhattan. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, building a future from blood and ashes and defiant, impossible love. The raid on the Rossi empire made headlines for 3 weeks straight. FBI seizes organized crime assets. 43 arrests, including Patriarch Vittorio Rossi. Son turned state's witness in stunning betrayal. My phone didn't stop ringing for days. Reporters, curious colleagues, former law school classmates suddenly remembering I existed. I ignored them all, focusing instead on helping the FBI sort through Dante's evidence and managing the aftermath for my Castellano families. Matteo called from his scholarship retreat, still believably oblivious, asking if I'd seen the news about some Mafia stuff in Brooklyn. Crazy, right? I said, staring at Dante across the penthouse. He was on his laptop, coordinating with his FBI handler. Total chaos. You okay, though? You sound tired, just busy. I'll see you this weekend for dinner. Love you. Love you too, Hermana. After I hung up, Dante looked up from his screen. You're not going to tell him? Eventually. Just not yet. I moved to sit beside him on the couch. One crisis at a time. The crisis, as it turned out, was bigger than either of us anticipated. 3 days after the raid, I was leaving the courthouse after filing motions on behalf of my Castellano families when a black SUV pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and a woman with sharp eyes and sharper cheekbones studied me with cool assessment. Miss Santos. I'm Isabella Marchetti. We need to talk. I recognized the name. Marchetti family 1, of the 5 families that controlled organized crime in New York. Dante had warned me they'd reach out. Eventually. I have nothing to say to you. Then just listen. She gestured to the back seat. 5 minutes. Or I can have this conversation on the courthouse steps, where every reporter in the city can hear. I got in the car. Isabella Marchetti was in her 50s, elegantly dressed, with the kind of presence that came from wielding power for decades. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Dante Rossi destroyed his family's empire, turned state's witness, put 43 men behind bars, including his own father. Her voice was cool, clinical. This creates problems. Power vacuums, questions about loyalty, concerns about who else might decide to cooperate with federal authorities. That's not my problem. It is, actually, because every family in New York knows Dante did this for you. A legal aid lawyer he was supposed to bribe, who instead threw money in his face and made him want to be better. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Romantic, also incredibly destabilizing. What do you want? I want you to understand the situation. There are 3 families who've put bounties on both your heads. 2 million for you, 5 million for Dante. Dead only. They want to make an example. She paused. But there are also families like mine who see opportunity. Dante dismantled the Rossi empire from the inside. That's valuable intelligence. He understands how federal investigations work, how to hide assets, how to avoid the mistakes his father made. You want to hire him? I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. I want to offer him a deal. Work for me as a consultant. Use his knowledge to help other families avoid Vittorio's fate. In exchange, I'll put the word out that you're both under Marchetti protection. The bounties disappear. You get to live. And if we refuse, then you spend the rest of your lives running. Dante might last 6 months. You? Less. She leaned forward. I'm offering survival, Miss Santos. I suggest you take it seriously. She dropped me off 3 blocks from my office with a business card and 48 hours to decide. When I told Dante that night, his face went carefully blank. It's a trap. Has to be. Or it's a lifeline. I paced his kitchen. You heard what she said. $5 million bounty, Dante. 3 families want us dead. How long can we realistically survive that? I won't work for another crime family. I just burned mine down. I'm not jumping from one empire to another, even if it keeps us alive. Yes. He grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to stop pacing and meet his eyes. Even then, I chose you over the life. I'm not going back, Gabby. Not for survival. Not for anything. Then what's the alternative? He was quiet for a long moment, jaw tight. FBI witness protection. New identities. Move somewhere far from New York. Give up everything. Your job, your name, your life here. And Matteo? We find a way to keep him safe without him knowing. Financial support through anonymous trusts. Protection without proximity. I pulled away, moving to the windows overlooking Manhattan. The city I'd lived in my entire life. The city I'd fought for, built a career in, dreamed in. Walking away from it felt like losing a limb. But staying meant death. For both of us. There's a third option, I said quietly. What? We go public. Fully public. You do interviews, Write a book. Become the face of redemption and whistleblowing. Make it so that killing you would draw so much media attention that no family would risk it. Use visibility as protection. Dante moved to stand beside me. That's actually not terrible. It's also putting a bigger target on your back. You'd be confessing everything publicly. No more hiding behind immunity deals. Your life would be under a microscope. But you'd be safe. If I'm the famous defector, the families would focus on me. Leave you alone. No. I turned to face him. We do this together, or not at all. I'm not watching you paint a target on yourself to protect me. Gabby, together, I insisted. Or I'm taking Isabella Marchetti's deal myself and you can't stop me. He stared at me for 3 heartbeats, something fierce and possessive and frustrated warring in his expression. Then he laughed, sharp, incredulous, almost unwilling. You're impossible. You love it. I do. He pulled me close, pressing his forehead to mine. Fine, we do it together. Go public, use visibility as armor, and pray it's enough to keep us breathing. We called Dante's FBI handler that night and pitched the idea. By morning, we had interest from 3 major publications and 2 streaming services. The media blitz started within a week. Dante's interview with The Times ran with the headline, "The Mafia Prince Who Chose Love Over Legacy." He was brutally honest about his crimes, his kills, the blood on his hands. About how a legal aid lawyer throwing money in his face had made him want redemption. My interview ran alongside his, the lawyer who wouldn't be bought. I talked about the Castellano case, about Marcus Webb, about the 47 families who'd inspired me to keep fighting. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Death threats mixed with marriage proposals. True crime podcast dissecting every detail. A bidding war for book rights. And slowly, gradually, the bounties were quietly withdrawn. Because killing the famous whistleblower and his defiant lawyer girlfriend would bring federal heat none of the families could afford. Isabella Marchetti sent a bottle of expensive wine with a note, "Well played. You've made yourselves untouchable through sheer audacity. Impressive." 3 weeks after going public, Dante and I stood outside the courthouse where it had all started. The Castellano Properties case had been resolved, all families keeping their apartments, with damages paid from seized Rossi assets. Marcus Webb's widow was suing the estate for wrongful death and would win millions. Justice. Messy, complicated, imperfect, but justice nonetheless. You did it, Dante said quietly. You won. We won. I took his hand, threading our fingers together. All of us. We drove back to Brooklyn through evening traffic. 2 people who'd burned down an empire and somehow come out the other side alive. The penthouse felt different now. Less like a fortress, more like home. That night, Dante cooked dinner while I worked on my laptop, reviewing new cases. We'd fallen into a rhythm over the past weeks. Comfortable. Domesticity punctuated by FBI debriefings and security protocols, and the constant awareness that we'd made powerful. Enemies, but we were alive. Together. Building. Something clean from ashes and defiance. I enrolled in classes, Dante said over pasta. I looked up. Classes? Hunter College. Criminal Justice Program. Figured if I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping the FBI dismantle crime families, I should probably understand the legal framework beyond what I learned from my father. He looked almost shy. Is that stupid? That's perfect. I stood, moving to kiss him. I'm proud of you. Yeah? His hand settled on my waist, familiar and warm. Yeah. You're figuring out who you are, building something new. With you. He rested his forehead against mine. Everything I build is with you now. We made love that night, with slow, deliberate tenderness. No longer driven by adrenaline or fear, but by choice and commitment and love that had been forged in fire. Afterward, wrapped in sheets that smelled like cedar and smoke and us, I traced the scars on his shoulder. Do you regret it? I asked quietly. Burning it all down? Not for a second. He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. You threw money in my face and called me a whore. Best thing that ever happened to me. I laughed, never letting you forget that. Good. Never want to forget the moment I met the woman who saved my life. We fell asleep like that, tangled together as Manhattan glittered 40 stories below, building a future neither of us could have imagined 3 weeks ago. The Brooklyn District Attorney's Organized Crime Unit had doubts about hiring me. Understandable, given that my boyfriend was a former Mafia prince turned FBI consultant whose testimony had put 96 people behind bars in the past 6 months. But my track record spoke for itself. 47 families with their homes, Marcus Webb's widow with justice and financial security, a dozen other cases I'd won in the months since going public. They hired me on a trial basis. I made senior prosecutor within 4 months. Dante's college classes were going well. Straight A's, because he approached criminal justice theory with the same focused intensity he'd once brought to organized crime. His FBI consulting work kept him busy 3 days a week, helping agents understand the intricacies of family structures and money laundering operations. We'd moved out of the Tribeca penthouse, too many memories, too much old life, and bought a townhouse in Park Slope. 3 bedrooms, small garden, enough space for both of us to work from home when needed. Mateo finally learned the truth on Thanksgiving. Dante cooked, I stress-ate appetizers, and when my brother arrived for dinner, I sat him down and explained everything. He took it better than expected, mostly. So you've been dating a Mafia prince for 6 months and didn't tell me? Former Mafia prince, Dante corrected from the kitchen. Current law student and government consultant. And he saved your life how many times? Twice. 3 times if you count the press conference where he took all the heat for the whistleblowing. Mateo studied Dante with clinical precision. You really love my sister. More than anything. Dante met his gaze steadily. She's the reason I'm not dead or in prison. The reason I wanted to be better than what my father made me. And you're okay with her working 80-hour weeks and being completely obsessed with her cases? I make her café con leche every morning and don't complain when she forgets to eat lunch. Mateo turned to me. I like him. He can stay. Thank God, I muttered, because he's not going anywhere. Dinner was chaotic and perfect. Mateo grilling Dante about FBI operations, Dante deflecting with practiced ease, me moderating when the questions got too invasive. By the time my brother left, he'd hugged Dante and extracted a promise that we'd come to his graduation in May. Your brother is terrifying, Dante said as we cleaned up. 20-year-old pre-med student, and he asked me 7 questions designed to evaluate my long-term commitment to you. He's protective. I basically raised him after Mom died. I know. He pulled me close, resting his chin on top of my head. It's one of the things I love about you. How fiercely you love, how you'd fight the world for people you care about. Learned from the best. You destroyed an empire for me, for us, he corrected. Everything I did was for us. We stood like that in our kitchen, surrounded by the debris of family dinner, and I marveled at how far we'd come. From that cramped office where I'd thrown money in his face to this. Domesticity and dinner parties, and a future we were building one careful day at a time. The trial started in February. Vittorio Rossi, facing 43 counts including murder, racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy. The prosecution's star witness, his own son. I sat in the courtroom gallery every day, watching Dante testify with brutal honesty. He didn't minimize his own crimes, didn't paint himself as a victim, just laid out the facts. What his father had done, what he'd witnessed, what he'd participated in. The defense tried to break him, called him a traitor, suggested he'd fabricated evidence for an immunity deal, painted him as a scorned son seeking revenge. Dante never wavered. I killed 11 people on my father's orders, he said on day 4, his voice steady. I laundered money. I intimidated witnesses. I did terrible things because that's what was expected of me, and I'd be in prison right now if not for the immunity deal I was offered in exchange for testimony. But that doesn't change the facts. My father ordered Marcus Webb's murder. He ran a criminal enterprise for 30 years. And I'm here to make sure he faces consequences, even if it costs me everything. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Life without parole. I found Dante in the hallway after the verdict, alone, staring out a window at the gray February sky. His shoulders were rigid, and when I touched his arm, he flinched. Hey, I said softly. You did it. It's over, is it? He turned and his eyes were haunted. I just sent my father to die in prison. And I feel what? Relieved. The word came out broken. I'm relieved, Gabi. What does that make me? I pulled him into my arms, holding him while he shook with silent sobs. It makes you human. It makes you someone who finally chose right over loyalty, who chose himself over the monster his father created. He told me he'd kill me when they were leading him away. Said I was dead, that every family would hunt me, that I'd never be safe. Let them try. I pulled back, cupping his face. You've got the FBI, the media, and one very stubborn Brooklyn prosecutor who happens to be in love with you. We're not easy targets. He managed a shaky laugh. No, you're really not. We left the courthouse together, walking out into cold February sunshine. Reporters shouted questions that we ignored, cameras flashing, the whole circus that had become our life. But in the car, hands clasped together, Dante exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 6 months. It's really over, he murmured. The trial is. The rest we'll handle as it comes. Together, always together. Spring came slowly to New York. The townhouse garden bloomed with early crocuses, and Dante planted tomatoes with the intense focus he brought to everything. I worked impossible hours on a corruption case while he studied for finals. We fell into routines. Morning coffee before I left for the DA's office, late-night takeout while reviewing case files and textbooks, Sunday mornings sleeping in, tangled together in sheets that smelled like us. The threats came occasionally. Anonymous letters, suspicious packages that the NYPD bomb squad had to clear, once a drive-by shooting that shattered our front window while we were at dinner. But we were still alive. Still fighting, still building. In May, we attended Mateo's graduation. He'd gotten into 3 medical schools and chose Columbia so he could stay close. Dante had anonymously funded a scholarship in our mother's name. I knew because I found the paperwork and cried for an hour. You didn't have to do that, I said that night. I wanted to. Your brother is brilliant. Your mother would have been proud. And I have more money than I know what to do with now that I'm not funding a criminal empire. I love you. I kissed him. Have I mentioned that lately? Not in the past 3 hours. I was getting worried. We made love that night with the windows open, spring air carrying the scent of blooming flowers and the distant sounds of the city. Dante held me afterward, fingers tracing lazy patterns on my spine, and I felt something shift, settle into place like a puzzle piece finally finding its home. Marry me, he said quietly. I went very still. What? Marry me. He shifted so we were face to face, his dark eyes serious. I know it's only been 7 months. I know we're still dealing with death threats and rebuilding our lives and figuring out who we are outside of the chaos. But I know I want to spend the rest of my life with you, however long or short that might be. I want mornings making you coffee and nights reviewing case files. I want to help Mateo through medical school and watch you win impossible cases. I want everything, Gabi. With you. My throat tightened. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything. He caught my hand, pressing it over his heart. I don't have a ring yet. Was planning to ask properly, but then you were lying here in my arms and I just needed you to know. Needed to ask, will you marry me, Gabriela Santos? I thought about the woman I'd been 7 months ago. The one who worked 80-hour weeks and lived on bodega sandwiches and thought she knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. That woman would never have imagined this. A former Mafia prince in her bed, proposing marriage with spring air washing over their tangled bodies. A life built from ashes and defiance and love that had been forged in the most unlikely way. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Hadn't been since the moment I threw money in his face and watched something shift in his dangerous eyes. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promise. And when we came together again, it was with the knowledge that we were building something permanent, something that would outlast death threats and trials and all the chaos still to come. Something ours. The wedding was small. City Hall, because neither of us wanted a big production. Mateo as witness, Dante's sister Sofia flying in from Milan. She'd cut ties with the family after the trial but maintained contact with Dante. My paralegal Maria, who'd become a close friend. I wore a simple white dress. Dante wore a charcoal suit. We exchanged vows in a courthouse that had seen 1,000 weddings, and when the judge pronounced us married, Dante kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Husband, I said against his lips. Wife, he responded, and his smile was blinding. We celebrated at a small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, just the 5 of us, and I watched Dante laugh at something Matteo said and felt my heart expand impossibly. This was what we'd fought for. This quiet joy, this hard-won peace, that night, back in our townhouse, Dante carried me over the threshold with exaggerated ceremony that made me laugh. Traditional, he said, setting me down gently. You, traditional? I'm a man of contradictions. Former Mafia prince, current law student, forever your husband. I like that last one best. We made love that night with the windows open to summer air, and Dante whispered promises against my skin. Forever and always and mine. I answered with his name and yes and promises of my own. In the aftermath, tangled together in sheets damp with sweat and effort, I traced the scars on his shoulder. The family crest that had been carved into his skin when he was 17, marking him as property. I'm getting it covered, he said quietly. Yeah? New tattoo. Something that represents now instead of then. Maybe a phoenix. Or I don't know. Something that means rebirth. I like that. I pressed a kiss over the old scars. You should do it. Come with me. I want you there when I reclaim this skin. Of course. We fell asleep like that, planning futures and covering old wounds, building a life one careful choice at a time. Epilogue. 6 months after the wedding, I stood outside the courthouse steps, briefcase in hand, watching Dante across the plaza. He was talking with his FBI handler, gesturing animatedly about something, and the afternoon sun caught his profile just right. My husband. Former killer, current law student, forever the man who'd chosen me over empires. He caught me staring and smiled. That sharp, dangerous smile that still made my pulse kick up even after a year together. Ready? He called. Yeah. I walked to meet him. How'd the meeting go? Good. They want me to consult on another case. Family in Queens they've been investigating for 3 years. You going to do it? Probably. Pays well, and I'm weirdly good at it. He took my briefcase, slinging it over his shoulder alongside his backpack. How was court? 1. Prosecutor versus organized crime. 2-0. My wife the legal shark. Your wife the exhausted legal shark who wants takeout and a nap. He laughed, pulling me close for a quick kiss. Takeout and nap it is. Then tonight I have plans. Oh, it's our anniversary. 1 year since you threw money in my face. I stopped walking. You remember the date? I remember everything about that night. The way you counted the bills slowly, like you were memorizing the amount. The way your hand shook just slightly when you threw them at me. The way you looked at me like I was something dirty that needed scraping off. His eyes were soft. Best night of my life. You're ridiculous. You love it. We walked through Brooklyn toward our townhouse, hands clasped together, and I marveled at the strange path that had brought us here. From that cramped office to this, Sunday evenings and anniversary plans and a future we were building one careful day at a time. A car radio reported another Rossi lieutenant flipping, cooperating with authorities, the empire still burning more than a year after Dante's testimony. Do you regret it? I asked quietly. Sometimes? He was quiet for a long moment then. Not for a second. You threw money in my face, Gabby, called me a whore, made me want to be worth something beyond fear and death. How could I ever regret that? Even though there's still a target on your back? Even though we have to check our car for bombs and vary our routes and live with security systems? Even then, he squeezed my hand. Because I get to wake up next to you every morning. Because I get to watch you win impossible cases and make the world slightly better. Because we built something clean from blood and ashes. That's worth any target, any threat, any price. We reached our townhouse as the sun set, painting Brooklyn in shades of amber and rose. Inside, Dante ordered Thai food while I changed into comfortable clothes. We ate on the couch, reviewing case files and textbooks, falling into the comfortable routine we'd built. Later, when the files were put away and the dishes were cleaned, he pulled me close. Happy anniversary, wife. Happy anniversary, husband. We made love that night with summer air washing over us, and I thought about everything that had led us here. The bribe, the defiance, the violence and fear, an impossible choice to trust each other, the burning of empires, and the building of something new. I love you. Dante whispered against my temple, his voice raw with emotion. Every day I love you more. I held him tighter. This man who'd killed 11 people in Red Neruda and chosen me over everything. Love you too, even though you're the criminal who ruined my life. He laughed, breathless. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Good. Because I'm high maintenance. I know. It's one of the things I love most. We fell asleep tangled together, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, building a future from defiance and blood money and love that had been forged in fire. Outside, Brooklyn hummed with life. Somewhere, Vittorio Rossi sat in a maximum security prison. Somewhere, crime families adjusted to new power structures. Somewhere, the FBI prepared new cases based on Dante's testimony. But in our townhouse, in our bed, wrapped in sheets that smelled like us, we were safe. Together. Building something ours. And that, I thought as sleep claimed me, was worth every risk, every threat, every impossible choice that had led us here, worth everything.